Thanks, everybody, and welcome to the final round of the 34th annual Burton D. Morgan Business Model Competition. This morning, we had 20 semifinal judges review the submissions from 22 teams that made it to the semifinals. And this afternoon, you'll hear from the top 5 teams selected by our 20 judges. We wish this could be an in-person event, but sadly, we'll still have to do this in a virtual format this year. And hopefully that you've been able to enjoy using the Philo platform. Before we get started with our final pitches, I'd like to introduce the judges. First, we have Jennifer Rhodes. Jennifer is currently a partner in the business group at Ice Miller, one of the largest law firms in Indianapolis. She's been an entrepreneur and has a passion for helping others advance their businesses. We also want to thank Ice Miller for being a gold sponsor. Our next judge is Mark Eckler. Mark is one of the founding partners at Math Ventures in Chicago, where they focus on companies with an unfair advantage in customer acquisition. Mark himself is a serial entrepreneur, having started 4 companies, and he also teaches entrepreneurship at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Business. Thank you for joining us, Mark. Our third judge is Tamim Abdul-Majid. Tamim is a general partner at OCA Ventures in Chicago. OCA focuses on early stage investment technology, financial services, education, and healthcare. Tamim started as a consultant who turned investment banker, who turned entrepreneur, and now is an investor. And our last judge is Stacy Burr. Stacy is a pioneer in the field of wearable sensing technology. In 2005, she founded a company called Textronics that launched the very first product in a new industry that today we call wearables. 3 years later, her company was acquired by Adidas, and today she is vice president of wearables at Google. And to all the students, I want to thank you all for participating in our competition. I understand that this took countless hours outside of everything that you are already doing involved within activities on campus. It's extremely rewarding seeing the progress that each and every one of you has made over the course of the competition. I hope that you enjoyed the experience, learned a few things, and will be able to continue and apply what you've learned on your future entrepreneurial endeavors. There were many, many great ideas, but unfortunately, only 5 could advance to the finals. Regardless of the outcomes today, I want to congratulate all of you for making it this far. As a reminder, for today's format, we'll have 20 minutes for each team, 10-minute pitch, and then 10 minutes of Q&A. So why don't we go ahead and get started with our first finalist.
All right, good morning, everybody. Madi's getting these slides set up here. All right, well, good morning again, everyone. My name is Joshua Barnett, and my partner, Madi Al-Husseini, and we are Aura Training Systems. So I'm actually a PhD student in mechanical engineering at Stanford in the FRG group.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Madi Al-Husseini. I completed my master's degree at Georgia Tech in computer science with a focus in artificial intelligence. And I'm currently completing my second and third master's degrees at Stanford and Purdue in aeronautics and astronautics and electrical engineering, respectively. Josh and I have known each other for a long time. We were actually friends in high school and undergraduate freshman year roommates at Georgia Tech. A few years ago, Josh and I actually started our first company together, also in the aviation safety space, called Salus. Salus is a reaction wheel-based stabilization system for helicopter hoist operations that was recognized by the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2019. And actually acquired by another company called Vita Inclinata last year. And so this is me, and this is a little bit about what I do. And this is here at Wheeler Army Airfield in Hawaii, and behind me is one of my helicopters, an HH-60 Mike Sikorsky Black Hawk. And as you can see from the red crosses on the sides of the helicopter, what I do is effectively evacuate patients from the battlefield and to the nearest closest hospital. And so the ability to fly an aircraft is critical, not just in my ability to be a professional pilot, but to ensure that I can provide life-saving capabilities to those in need. Now, whether you are a professional pilot or you are a civilian pilot, maybe working on your ratings in an aircraft like a Cessna, the mark of any good pilot is in your ability to perform maneuvers. Now, what a maneuver is of course dependent on what you fly and what your mission set is, but they can include auto rotations, steep turns, and even combat maneuvers. And we know that improved maneuvering flight leads to fewer pilot-induced accidents, improved handling of mechanical failures, and of course, increased mission success, whether you perform medical evacuation, like myself, water bucket operations for firefighting missions, cargo hoists, etc. And so the question becomes, well, how can we improve maneuvering flight and pilots across the spectrum? And the answer is pretty simple. You fly. And in the words of Chuck Yeager, the best pilots fly more than the others. That's why they're the best. And you'd be hard pressed to find any aviator or pilot that would disagree with that. The problem is, of course, that flying is prohibitively expensive. So for example, the cost of a single flight hour in the aircraft that I had shown previously is $4,200. And even if you're not flying an advanced airframe like a Black Hawk, even if you're flying a Cessna, those costs can absolutely rack up. And so there have been a number of flight alternatives that have existed, and these are generally known as simulators. And in the past, they have included things like the use of Microsoft HoloLens, actual software you can put on your laptop, and more typical simulators. But in the words of Chief Warrant Officer 3 Yoshi Kono, who's actually a member of my military unit, simulators, they aren't bad for training instruments and introducing the cockpit to newbies, but they sure don't fly like real aircraft. And they can't provide that touch and feel required to really get a mastery of what an aircraft is like. And so the problem, succinctly explained, is that actual in-aircraft flight time is expensive, but critical. Simulators provide a great deal of valuable raw and process information, but they lack the realness found by flying a real aircraft. Or it improves training so as to reduce the total amount of time required to master maneuvers in real aircraft, and does so in a manner tailored to training manuals specific to both military and civilian flight. And so just taking a look at the savings to consumer, here we are assuming, for example, a 20% reduction in the total time required through the use of our device for either progressions or actual check rides, licenses, etc. And so if we look at the Black Hawk for something called an RL3 to RL1 progression, which typically takes 40 hours, assuming we save that 20%, we're looking at savings of $33,600 just for a single pilot. And of course, again, this is critical, not just to our military aviators, but to those who are working to fly in their spare time. Again, savings of $2,500 or $4,400 for entry-level fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft. And so the purpose is for us to provide efficient flight training, capable pilots, and safer skies, using a pipeline of computer vision and machine learning tools. Aura provides maneuver-specific process data to pilots in real time during flight, without needing to physically connect to the aircraft, or it can support any rotary or fixed wing aircraft.
So our patent pending solution consists of two components. We have a mountable camera system as well as a custom iOS application, which you can see here in the picture to the left. So the mountable camera system features computer vision and neural network powered character recognition software, which actually allows us to recognize specific instruments, transcribe the values that they're indicating, such as torque, altitude, and we can feed that directly into our iOS application, where we can perform post-processing and then visualize to the user. This allows us to provide immediate task-specific feedback to pilots as well as the instructors, and we can actually clearly annotate as whether or not the maneuver has been executed within standards. Slide. A video here to the left shows our current neural network, which shows that we have fairly good accuracy in terms of transcribing data, although there's a few mistakes. But these can be smoothed out with post-processing, and we will continue to refine this model as we collect more data. Next slide, please. And we have another video here to the left showing our custom iOS application as it exists right now, where we have access to various PDF data that actually shows the flight maneuver that you wish to perform, the current standards, and as well as it can show the data that has been downloaded directly from the mountable camera system to be visualized to the user. Next slide, please. In terms of market, on the civilian side, we have over 660,000 pilots in the United States alone, according to the FAA. We're particularly interested in the 113,000 certified instructor pilots and the 197,000 plus student pilots in the US. And on the military side, we have over 18,000 pilots in the US Air Force, 14,000 in the Army, 7,000 in the Navy. Next slide, please. And in terms of the market future, it also looks bright. According to a Congressional Armed Services report in 2019, military services estimate that they will require upwards of 75,000 pilots over the next 20 years, Boeing's 2018 pilot outlook indicates that North American companies will need to hire 206,000 new pilots over the same period. Next slide. In terms of how to actually reach this, we have a threefold marketing approach. We want to attend large aviation conferences with 2 attendees, both as attenders and exhibitors. That'll cost around $9,000. We'll advertise in large aviation magazines for about a quarter-page size ad. It's about $13,000. And most crucially, we will perform in-person sales demonstrations targeting the largest flight schools in each state, which we estimate will cost about $40,000. Now, if we assume that we get about 2,500 additional subscribers as a result of our marketing, given our cost, we'll have a customer acquisition cost of around $24. Next slide, please. And in terms of calculating the lifetime value, we've split it up into roughly 3 categories. We have an individual with both a pro and a basic license with about a 10-year lifetime. This would give about $18,050 for the pro version and a $14,000 lifetime value for the basic. And what we really are targeting is a typical flight school. If we assume about 10 pro bundles, which each bundle would include 4 pro licenses and an admin version. So for this example, we would have an initial cost of about $500 for the hardware times 10 at a $1,400 annual subscription fee times 10. If we assume a customer retention rate of around 90%, a profit margin per license of about 43%, as well as considering about a 10-year lifetime for the customer, we would have about $59,000 in lifetime value.
And so taking a look at our customer discovery process, this is the business model canvas that we began with earlier on. And there's quite a bit here, but what we really want to focus in on that's changed quite a bit over the past few months has been key partners. So initially we listed military acquisition, military research and development, civilian flight schools, and compatible flight training technologies. Now, since October 2020, when we first started the business and working on the product, we've had more than 80 total user interviews to include 46 Army aviators. These include instructor pilots, standardization pilots, maintenance test pilots, and more across 3 different aircraft, and 7 civilian pilots, all of which were certified flight instructors for both rotary wing and fixed wing aircraft. And we have a few logos and patches here for different companies and units. These are all organizations that we've talked to extensively, and they include Lightning Dustoff, Charlie 325 here in Hawaii, Army Futures Command, the United States Army Aviation Center of Excellence, 25th Infantry Division, Georgia Tech, Lanilea Flight School, and General Dynamics, just to name a few. And so there's quite a few lessons learned here, but I do want to highlight a couple that I think were particularly interesting. And so when we had initially first developed our product, we had done it purely with training in mind. The idea was to show those pilots, the extent to which they were performing these maneuvers well. But when we were actually talking to a number of different instructor pilots, it became pretty clear to them that there was actually a second use of our technology, actually three uses of our technology. We could actually use our device as an interoperable black box that can be used with any aircraft on the fly. So that was one. And then the second was to actually use our technology, not just for training, but for testing. And that actually helps on check rides for IPs to immediately determine whether or not maneuvers had been met. At this time, IPs basically just generally try to maintain safety of the aircraft while also looking at different readings in the aircraft at the same time to determine the success of students during their check rides. But our product would be able to alleviate some of the stress and burden on those instructor pilots. We were also able to develop a better understanding of the science and technology ecosystem and funding opportunities available to us to include select SBIRs, which we are currently waiting to apply to. And we also recognize and realize that we would need an airworthiness release, also known as an AWR, in order to ensure that AURA can fly in military aircraft, but that could be attained through a cooperative research and development agreement with specified Army labs, which we are actually already working on with one lab in particular, the United States Army Aeromedical Research Lab, with whom we actually have a relationship from our previous products in the past. And so here is a refined look at our business model canvas. So re-looking at the key partnerships here, you see a new level of granularity. Air Force Works, the United States Army Aeromedical Research Lab, Army Futures Command, 25th Infantry Division Combat Aviation Brigade, Air Force Ventures, Program Executive Office Aviation, X-Tech Search, and Naval X are actually only a few of the handful of organizations that we've already reached out to and talked to about ensuring we have a product that is not just technically sound, but operationally sound and really meets the needs of users, whether, again, they're professional pilots or everyday civilian hobbyist pilots. And so just in terms of looking ahead, so this is our roadmap. And at the end of the day, we want to ensure we are developing a validated product worthy of being used by our aviators and pilots and everything else is going to be built around that for us. And we've already developed our minimum viable product. We've conducted a feasibility study on the UH-60 Alpha Lima helicopter, which uses steam gauges instead of a glass cockpit design. And we've already filed our provisional patent application. Looking forward, we look forward to actually securing that cooperative research and development agreement with USROL, integrating additional higher level tasks, filing a non-provisional utility patent application, completing our validation in aircraft with the UH-60 mic, securing an AWR, and hopefully actually roll out our product to different flight schools and military units to begin the process of iterative refinement. And so our vision is reimagined flight training, leading to more capable pilots and safer skies. We're targeting flight schools, military units, airlines, and individual pilots in order to improve check ride pass rates, standardize maneuver grading, and ultimately reduce the incidence of aircraft accidents. Purdue has a long and proud history in aviation, and we hope that our product, the AURA training system, can add just a little bit to that legacy. Thank you very much.
Nice job, gentlemen. The floor is open for questions from the judges.
Arnold, how long do we have time for questions?
We have 7 minutes right now.
Okay. I had a question. You're showing the cost savings associated with training. Have you been able to correlate the performance improvement of the pilots as a result of them going through the training? Because it strikes me that you could really add on to the value potentially of your subscription model if not only were you able to show cost savings associated with this training technology, but also improved piloting skills, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And defining those metrics, I think for us over the next 6 months is going to be one of the most important things that we can do if we really want to roll this out. Right now, we're kind of restricted in the sense that we can use this in our MVP and maybe a private sense, but we're still restricted legally from using our product on military aircraft until we get that AWR, which is on the horizon. So, when we assume a 20% reduction in total time, where that number came from was based on our conversations with instructor pilots whose job it is to work with students and where they would foresee us being able to save on the costs. But absolutely, in the near future, as we're actually able to begin testing in aircraft, not just on the ground, which we've already done, but in aircraft, we'll get a better sense of, hey, this is the average amount of time. This is based on statistical deviation and whatnot, what we find our product to be able to do. And then we can get a better sense, really clarifying what those cost savings will be. I hope that answers your question. Please let me know if.
Other questions?
I have a quick question. I'm just curious, people that would go through this program are pretty committed to flying. Have you thought of just to expand the scalability of a light platform that would give someone the experience, maybe if they're making a decision, do I want to do all this? To maybe, I'm thinking about the scaling process here, right? How do you bring more people into the fold? Have you thought about something like that? I don't want to call it a gaming platform because that would be way wrong, but something where someone could have a lighter version to maybe engage them in the process before they've made I would say the full commitment to go this direction.
So one way, I like that a lot. I think one way we've kind of thought about maybe a twist on that is with the flight schools. And so one of the things, like when we're providing those bundled to flight schools, is you have students who will come in and they aren't necessarily always committed if they're just, starting out and they're just like, I want to take a flight up and see what it's like. We have introductory flights for that reason for folks in Cessnas. And so one of the neat things we can do is, with those bundles, basically it's just the instructor pilot in the schools who are paying for it, but the students can still reap some of the benefits to actually see some of their maneuvers. So it's not necessarily a gaming thing, but without actually paying for it, you are actually able to allow new pilots who haven't necessarily committed to actually take a look at their own maneuvers and their own work so they can actually see themselves flying, which, it's not necessarily the gaming thing, but I do think it provides a little bit of insight into what the whole process might look like when they can actually view themselves flying, which they would be able to do with our product.
Yeah, I was just thinking out loud a little bit. I was just thinking that might be a way to sort of sell your platform, get people sort of using it and hooked, because to sell this, you got to compare it to all the other alternatives. And it's, you got to make a major decision, whereas you could sort of bring people into the fold maybe a little easier that way.
Great point. Absolutely.
Mark?
Yeah, I was curious. So I'm not a pilot, so I'm asking out of ignorance. But from a licensing perspective, I always love regulatory compliance and somebody forcing somebody to take an action. And I'm just curious, could this also help on the licensing side?
I mean, so Marty's the pilot and I'm not either, but I would tend to think that if you're talking about pilots actually obtaining their licenses, that's, I mean, exactly what we're kind of looking for in terms of helping people to get there more efficiently and cost effectively. It would be great if it could even be, standardized or mandatory, having this sort of objective reading of how well you actually did your flight, which would be great for us. That probably wouldn't be so great, I'm sure, to some instructor pilots, but I'm sure Marty could.
Yeah, just to make sure, if that's the kind of the train of thought, I mean, it's definitely a real possibility. I mean, the FAA is very, very, very big on aviation safety. I mean, that's not a stretch at all, and it really would not be out of their wheelhouse to force certain flight schools to have if not our product, right, that it wouldn't be a particular product, but a certain kind of technology. If what we're offering really is as revolutionary as we hope it will be, and can clearly show a reduced incidence of aircraft accidents, then it is not at all would not at all surprise me if the FAA would have a certain requirement, especially in the years to come, for a technology like this to be a required part of any certified flight instructors bundle, or at the very least, the FAA can make recommendations, and that might support that too.
Yep. Thank you.
Casey, did you have a follow-up question?
I do, and maybe just take your pick on any of these. What's the IP specific to, and what's the current tool? Is it an in-person instructor that is next to the pilot that's making the assessment and providing feedback?
Yeah, I'd love to take the IP part first, and then maybe we can elaborate a little more on the front. So in terms of intellectual property that we've already filed, is that what you're referring to? Like what we've already done? Okay, yeah, absolutely. So we filed I'd love to pull it up, but I think we're a little bit limited on time. But essentially, we filed a provisional patent application on the use of not only the scanning of the cockpit, but the actual hardware used to actually feed that back to the iPad. So Josh and I did a pretty significant literature review, patent search. I myself actually am a registered patent agent, so this is a process I'm very familiar. So we've gone through the literature. There's really, honestly, nothing like this. There's a little bit of work. This is actually a very interesting active area right now where people are kind of trying to pull information off of the instrument display and do different things with it. But this is the first embodiment that is recommending what we are, which is not only taking that information, but also actively providing it to aircraft pilots in a process manner in flight. So that's kind of what the utility patent application covers. In terms of the product itself, so I mean, ultimately, it really is, it comes down to the hardware and the software. I mean, the hardware is literally that camera mounted system and the iPad. Now the iPad itself, all pilots fly with one. I don't have mine on with me right now, but it's called a knee pad and knee board, and generally everybody has one. So that hardware is already organic to pilots. And so really hardware wise, our product is just the mounted camera system with the computer on the back end that is feeding that information and analyzing it and processing it, and the app. And that's really the software component. So those two things comprise the entirety of our product. IP, instructor pilot not required. So if a pilot wants to go out and use this product on his own and be able to improve his own ability to fly, that's something that they can do. And we've actually heard quite a few folks that were interested in that in our customer discovery interviews.
I think we have time for one more question. I want to double check to make sure that Jennifer or Tamim, if you wanted to chime in for one other question.
I'm
If
good.
not,
Thanks.
you're good. Okay.
Yeah. I
Mark, go ahead.
Question, if Jennifer doesn't have an extra question there.
No, I'm good. I'm sorry, guys. I dropped for a portion of this, so I'm just listening to your excellent questions.
So I have a question about insurance. So I'm curious if the insurance companies that provide insurance to pilots might find this information really helpful, if there's some kind of reporting mechanism, and if the insurance company could be a great avenue to force compliance.
That's a really, I can honestly say I
Yeah.
haven't even thought about the insurance.
I guess it would
aspect,
be
but
similar to
absolutely.
like an OBD port reading for like how traditional car insurance works now.
Yeah, so look from the point of view of the insurance company, right? They're trying to reduce losses, obviously. And if you have better trained pilots who have, theoretically should have fewer losses. If the insurance company really bought into it and believed in the efficacy of your model, then they could do a carrot or a stick. Like they could lower rates if you use this, or raise rates if you don't, or even make it mandatory. I've done this totally differently in healthcare, not in flight instruction, but it's the same concept, because the insurance company, I have a saying, which is follow the money. At the end of the day, who really cares and why do they care? And I think the insurance company really cares.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really great point. Definitely something that we'll look into more and kind of hopefully run with. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. Aircraft insurance is super expensive. Last week I paid $1,200 just for renter's insurance. Incredibly expensive, and any little bit I know on the pilot side that can mitigate that, and certainly the insurance companies would be interested, would go a long way.
Yeah, I'd be offline. I'd be happy to talk to you further about how to set that up and structure that if you want.
Yeah, we
we'd
appreciate
love
that.
to do that.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. We need to move on to our second team.
Thank y'all.
Up next is Eon Charge. So while they're loading up their ones, just a reminder to the judges that if you have your force ranking sheet, to remember to fill that out, and any comments and feedback we can give back to the teams.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, you're good, Christopher.
Awesome. So yeah, hi everyone. So before I start, I just want to say a huge thank you to all the judges for taking the time to listen to our pitches today. We really appreciate you all being here. So with that, my name is Chris Jing. I'm the co-founder and COO of AeonCharge by Legacy, and today I'll be talking about a bit about AeonCharge. We're building a universal IoT-powered electric vehicle charging platform that aggregates electric vehicle chargers across providers and standardizes the smart charging experience for all EV drivers. The overarching problem we're trying to solve is the fact that EV charging in its current state is broken. Public EV charging is a disjointed, inconvenient mess because of how unreliable EV charging is. 9 out of 10 EV drivers own a second gasoline vehicles that they use for longer range trips. And even worse, 2 out of 10 EV owners actually abandon their EVs and switch back to gasoline vehicles just because of charging inconveniences. This is really the largest barrier for EV adoption in the United States and frankly, the rest of the world. Starting of March of last year, we conducted 276 interviews with EV drivers, and most of these were phone calls, emails, and face-to-face conversations. We also would spend days camping out at charging locations around Indiana to observe charging patterns and frequencies. And we would talk to the people charging there to listen to their complaints and understand their pain points. The common complaint that everyone had was that public EV charging is just too inconvenient. Drivers need to download multiple apps to charge in public. 78% of drivers reported using more than 3 EV charging apps. There was also no real-time vacancy data available to drivers. Drivers wouldn't know if a charging station is occupied or not without actually going to the location. And finally, coverage is fragmented between countless charger providers and privately owned chargers. This is especially a problem outside of urban areas. We also conducted a second batch of interviews with 154 charger owners, and we found that most public chargers are old chargers. And charger owners also have issues managing their chargers. These site hosts don't want to spend the time or money to replace their old EV chargers, and they also really don't have the mind space to think about or manage their EV chargers. They care more about running their own businesses as they should. In terms of these old EV chargers can really be categorized into 2 buckets, dumb chargers and smart chargers. So dumb chargers make up a vast majority of charging stations in the Midwest. This is because of how low cost they are. But Although dumb chargers are significantly cheaper than smart chargers to install, they lack a lot of the live data and payment features, which are really necessary to create a convenient charging experience for users. Smart chargers also aren't perfect either, since they lack, since their live occupancy feature can only detect if an electric vehicle is charging or not. It doesn't detect if a gasoline vehicle is illegally parked or if something is obstructing the charger. And both of these are actually quite common situations. So our solution to these problems is to create a smart, universal, IoT-powered EV charging network by connecting drivers to site hosts. So on the host side, we're offering a low-cost, proprietary modular upgrade that converts these unstandardized dumb chargers into standardized smart chargers. And on the driver side, we use this live data from our IoT technology to create an effortless and convenient charging experience in-app. For users, our mobile app offers a convenient and streamlined charging experience. Our users have access to chargers from various providers. They can see live charger data such as occupancy, downtime, and demand peaks. Our app also covers the end-to-end charging experience. So everything from planning reservations and payment to after they're done, after they start charging, what are some local attraction recommendations, and they can also check their battery charging status. On the host side, we offer our modular technology upgrade paired with a charger management toolkit. So our SmartUp technology offers the latest tech at a fraction of the cost. We're more than 50 times cheaper than the full system overhaul. Our technology is not only cheaper than installing new smart chargers, but the data is actually more robust, right? Smart chargers, they don't detect if a gasoline vehicle is illegally parked, but our technology does. And our charger management software also offers a really rich and insightful view into the usage analytics and other charger data through our robust management dashboard. And we make this information as accessible as possible to site hosts so they can focus on running their businesses. We also offer advertising and marketing tools for these site hosts to promote their businesses on our app. And our value proposition was created based on the real use cases and insights that we got from talking to these hundreds of customers that we talked to. And we're not only model agnostic, but we're also use case agnostic. This is a really exciting time for the EV charging and electric vehicle industry. Not only is the EV charging infrastructure market expected to grow at 46% CAGR for the next 7 years, the market is also fragmented and primed for aggregation. Policymakers have really begun to prioritize electric vehicles in recent years, which has resulted in many new EV-friendly policies, mandates, and incentives. And our market isn't just a high-growth future opportunity, it's actually already massive today. Based on a bottoms-up calculation, our total revenue opportunity in the United States in 2021 is just over 700 million, and this is expected to balloon to over 2 billion in just 4 years' time. And this total revenue opportunity was calculated as a function of our users' revenue opportunity added to our host revenue opportunity. We just launched our closed beta in March, and our traction so far has been exciting already. We hit our offering limit of 107,000 for equity crowdfunding on Net Capital, and many of these investors are actually EV drivers who are fed up with the current state of public EV charging and excited about our product. We've also seen 85% bi-weekly growth for our users and 93% bi-weekly growth for our charging stations. And we currently have 103 beta users and 33 charging stations on our platform. We also have 176 waitlisted users who are based outside of Indiana. And here are a few of the site hosts we've signed contracts with already. We've also received many requests from these site hosts asking when we can, if we can just come and upgrade the chargers immediately. So many of them have asked us when our product will launch and be available. We also have signed agreements with corporate partners. We have a signed partnership contract with NOx, which is the largest EV charger manufacturer in Europe, to be their exclusive partner in the Midwest. Not only does this enable us to own our own smart chargers without having to manufacture them, we also retain access to all NOx managed chargers on the West Coast. And we also have an integration with ChargePoint Charging Network. This allows our users to navigate, book, and pay at all 120,000 ChargePoint stations in the United States. We have a two-sided marketplace model with two key revenue streams. So on the user side, this is our B2C we get charging revenue and offer a premium subscription with perks such as unlimited free charging and special referral discounts. And for our B2B, which is our kind of host side, we get revenue from advertising when site hosts and other nearby businesses promote their business on our app. And we also receive a referral commission for each user that we direct into these businesses. So these are like restaurants, bars, and grocery stores. Our core model is really being a demand aggregator. So this is very similar to Kayak, Airbnb, or DoorDash. Our projections look really promising too. With our current growth, we're positioned to acquire 1% of the EV driver market and 40% of the EV charging station market in Indiana by June of this year. And if we figure in slowing growth and churn, we still expect to hit 100 million ARR by mid-2023. Our go-to-market strategy on the user side consists of both online and in-person channels. We're fostering our online communities through social media and media presences. We've also been leaving handwritten memos at charging locations to increase user exposure, and these are designed specifically to grab attention. We're also collaborating with local business partners and venues to refer users onto our platform, and we plan to attend EV trade shows and community events as well in the near future. On the host side, we're primarily using cold outreach to target site hosts who own charging stations. This includes small local businesses and also large retail chains who own multiple locations, municipal governments who manage a specific area, and energy and utility companies who can benefit from our grid data. With these go-to-market channels, our LTV to CAC ratio looks promising, with a 1-year LTV CAC of 12.5 for users and 15.9 for site hosts. So we calculated a 1-year LTV instead of a full lifetime LTV because we're still not sure what churn, retention, and total lifetime looks like since we just launched our closed beta last month. When we compare our business model to the competition, we're able to achieve the most coverage while also offering the best experience. Since our platform aggregates chargers from various providers and the easily and scalable nature of our low-cost modular technology provides users with the smart, standardized charging experience. And finally, to execute on all this, we have a strong team of complementary founders who are determined to win. We've had experience working at Tesla, Microsoft, Shell, and Accenture. Dewey, who's been leading our hardware development, has 3 years of R&D experience in semiconductor nanotech, as well as industry experience in the renewable energy sector. And then who's leading our software has experience as the software and operations director for an international nonprofit. We're also mentored by amazing advisors who are experts in the EV industry and in building new technologies. Our goal is to raise, or our ask is to raise an additional 150,000 to close the gap to our funding goal. And this will allow all 4 founders to work full-time, also to continue to scale our sales and marketing functions, as well as iterate on our hardware and software development. We've raised 450,000 so far from angels, equity crowdfunding, and NSF grants. So the future looks really bright for us, and this is a really exciting industry with many new emerging technologies. Our big picture vision is to become the only platform needed for EV drivers to easily navigate, book, and pay for their EV charging sessions across different providers and different charger types. We hope to eventually have our platform available on both our mobile app as well as our built-in software on all electric vehicles. In a few years' time, EVs will soon dominate the roads, and we want to be the navigation platform people use when they get behind the wheel. Thank you all for your time today. I'll open the floor for any questions. Thank you.
Nice job. Questions from the judges?
I have a.
Steve, let's go with the judges first, if you don't mind.
Okay, sorry.
Stacey, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to understand your 2 business models. You've got an app that's helping EV owners find and locate available, like appropriate charging stations. And then the part that I was a little fuzzy on was the piece of hardware that converts the charging station from dumb to smart. Is that correct? That's a device that you need to. I'm just
Yes.
wondering, do you need to do both things in order to be successful? Could you just be successful with the location wayfinding or the location finding app?
Yeah, so at the moment we're doing that location aggregation on our software, but yeah, our modular upgrade, it's a proprietary technology that that upgrades these dumb chargers into these standardized smart chargers. So that attaches to any type of charger model, charger type.
And you need that to expand the network of available locations, right?
That helps
Yeah.
standardize the chargers on our network, but we can have, we actually currently do have chargers on our network that aren't standardized as well. So some chargers will have the smart data and some won't, but yeah, we can be successful either way with or without.
Thank you.
So can I ask, like, what is your path to creating the supply side? Like how do you find the different people with the chargers and, you know, get them on the system? And what's kind of the breakout between the dumb charger versus smart charger density right now?
Yeah, so right now in Indiana, the vast majority of charging stations are dumb chargers because of just how low cost it is. And in terms of kind of doing this cold outreach, so at the moment we've been mostly doing outbound cold outreach to these local businesses as well as chain locations around the Indiana and Midwest area. So there's like aggregation platforms online that have databases in terms of we have our own database in terms of charging locations that we've aggregated from a few different sources.
So like if I just start to think through, you're building a two-sided market and the incentive at one end for the users is to have that charging network, and then for obviously the suppliers of the chargers, the other end is to have you know, a user base. And when you go to like day 1000, I imagine like it makes sense that you have all the users and the chargers. But what's kind of the interplay today of building this two-sided? Like, what's the incentive to get people on early today? How many users do they get access to? How do you kind of create this like management of the supply and demand side of the market?
Yeah, so at the moment oh, sorry.
Oh no, that's it. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been focusing a lot on the I think with a two-sided marketplace, there's always the chicken and egg issue. But we found that that's not a huge issue for us because we're able to kind of really capture the B2B side really quickly. So we expect to hit 40% market penetration for that side by June, while only hitting 1% on the EV driver side. So since the number of charging locations is relatively limited, and there's really not a downside for these site hosts to kind of upgrade and join our platform at the moment, we've found really strong traction on that side.
To add on that,
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to provide a little bit context to what Chris said. Basically, these site hosts right now, even though we don't have like a large user base, our technology solve their problems. They have problems managing their chargers. They can't charge people charge at their location because they don't have a payment system. They can provide live data when they want to check whether there's a car or not. And so the upgrade itself is a solution for the problem they have. So they want the upgrade, even though we don't have the user base. And that's why we don't have the chicken and egg problem.
So to that point, I have a question. From the manufacturers of the dumb terminals point of view, won't they just start to, if your technology becomes more market dominant, won't they be forced to start creating their own smart charging stations and convert their dumb stations into smart stations from the manufacturer's point of view?
Yes. So to answer that question, the answer is yes. Even us as a team, we foresee that in the future, all new chargers installed will be smart chargers instead of the dumb chargers. We just see our current modular IoT powered smart up tech as a bridge for us for basically to standardize all chargers across United States. The reason is, again, we want to make sure that we have the live data if it is being occupied or not. But in the future, when it is available, we no longer need the modular IoT device. But just to emphasize one point, our main goal is to become the only platform for EV drivers to navigate. So in 10 years time, our goal is basically just to aggregate all chargers so that all transactions will be through us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the judges? If not, since we do have some time, Steve, if you wanted to jump in with your question, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was sort of already answered, but I think the biggest challenge is going to be onboarding the suppliers to be able to supply this, because without the supply, you don't get the users. So I was questioning what kind of incentives, and knowing that when you onboard suppliers, they may not get action right away until you bring the users in. Are you thinking about some incentive to really get the suppliers online so you have something to sell, essentially?
Yeah, so at the moment, we're actually offering our modular upgrades for free to these site hosts. This is because we found that instead of charging them $100 upfront, we can actually get more revenue in the long run. Since right now we're averaging around $50 of revenue per month from these site hosts, so it paybacks within less than 2 months. So that's been a huge incentive, since there's really not a downside for them to kind of receive this free upgrade and join our platform.
Yeah, that's going to be important.
Do you see a vehicle manufacturer like a Tesla partnering with you at some point, or building that functionality into, I could see at somebody like a Tesla actually building that into their software, into their that functionality, helping drivers find the closest charger.
I was thinking the
Yes.
same thing, Mark, because that seems like it's a point of hesitancy for potential EV car buyers is, okay, I'm in the middle of the Midwest. How am I going to, find charging stations? So that could be, a sponsorship, a strategic investment from an EV car manufacturer.
Right.
Yes, I think that's a really great point. In the future, we are planning to do partnership with vehicles manufacturers, and yeah.
Other questions?
I have a last question. Do you get any sense that there would be some other standards body or de facto standard that emerges that might displace your approach to the charging standardization?
Yes, thank you for your question. So to answer that question, we foresee that our biggest threat is if Google one day wants to play in this field, they can just show the chargers within their Google Maps. And then I think that's the most convenient solution for EV drivers. But with that, we have a protection mechanism, which is our hardware side. With our hardware side, with the modular IoT upgrade, we kind of set our foot on this market so that when Google wants to get the data of the chargers, dumb chargers, the only option for them is to partner with us to integrate our API in their Google Map.
That's cool to hear. I was actually thinking you should do a Google Maps integration, just like gas stations or restaurants. Cool.
Yeah, we currently own the rights of the data as well as the rights of the charging station location to manage them into perpetuity. That's the contract we've been signing. So, yeah.
So you guys need the money so you can go fast, right? Yeah.
Definitely, we're trying to grow very fast.
All right, nice job, guys. So on the schedule, we have a short break. So people can just feel free to hang out here or one of the other lounges. We'll get started again at 2:15.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions and feedback.
Thank you.
Why don't we go ahead and get started? So Connor, are you all set?
Yep, ready to go.
All right, the floor is yours.
Hello, I'm Connor, and we're Hippo Straw, and our team is comprised of Dave Mash, who is a research scholar here at Purdue University, and Jeffrey Youngblood, who is a material science professor also at Purdue.
Now, thank you all. What we started off as a business was to form a circular business model. So ours was not just a scientific solution, though it does have a strong technical scientific solution, but it was also to say, how do we apply science in a manner that we form a non-wasteful circular business model? And in that instance, now we did the proverbial hit two birds with one stone, in that we managed to use one waste pollutant material into a raw material, a sustainable raw material, to substitute another pollutant. And this is the story that we are here to share with you. In our customer discovery in the plastics industry, and particularly with the restaurant industry, we noted that restaurants have a legislative problem, in the sense that the states and cities and local authorities are banning the use of single-use plastics. And with those bans, restaurants have to identify alternatives, and those alternatives hopefully have to be pleasant to their customers who use those products, such as straws. Now, the alternatives, the most popular alternative, good old paper. And one would argue, as we contended, as we spoke to our customers, that paper may not be such a sustainable material. Imagine we use paper and, to make books. So there's paper to make books, and I've had this book courtesy of Purdue. It's for now 3 years. The foundry actually for now 3 years, and it will last for 20 years. What about using that same paper to make a single-use straw that lasts for 3 minutes? And the little guy on the screen has got no home. His home took 10 years to build, no home, expensive to process paper into pulp, uses huge amounts of energy and water to throw it away after 3 minutes over a beverage. Didn't sound very sustainable. The other alternatives in the market are corn-based or food-based materials. And some of the folk at the Purdue Foundry will recall that we started off indeed with a food-based material ourselves. We started off with a wheat straw, a pasta straw. But in customer discovery, you really had some end users actually that would be like, well, you know what, food-based, but that doesn't sound such a good idea. There's people that are starving in the world, and you're converting food into a single-use product. And so paper, while it's the most popular, there are no good sustainable alternatives. Now let's go into the use of paper straws. The one major problem that customers identified with paper was it falls apart, it gets sticky, and it's just not pleasant. In some instances, some actually said it alters the taste and the flavor of the drink. So that really created a huge homework for us. That, okay, so how do we apply science and solve a problem where the material we're using is going to be pleasant for people to hear about such material, and it's sustainable, and B, we actually deliver a superior user experience to the end user customers of the restaurants ultimately. And that's all of us, right? We all, one way or the other, patronize restaurants. So this is the story we're here to share with you about our solution, as Connor will get into it briefly.
So that's why we developed the world's first tree-free water hyacinth-based biodegradable straw that doesn't use a food material, since customers had complaints about using a food material for a non-food item. And we do that with a more sustainable material called water hyacinth. In the United States alone, water hyacinth covers an area equivalent to 1.3 million football fields. In these water bodies, all of the water, nutrients, and oxygen is sucked out of the water bodies like a vacuum. And in these water bodies, entire aquatic ecosystems are devastated in the southern United States and tropical regions of the world by this invasive plant species. And as an environmental engineering student here at Purdue University, I saw a dire need to combine all of these problems into one solution. But first, we had to go on a customer discovery journey. And we made two hypotheses, and our hypothesis was that both legislation and price would be the most important factors in a restaurant's purchasing decision for their single-use products. We interviewed 65 restaurants and 150 end users, and every single customer had a complaint about their user experience of paper straws. And also restaurants had complaints about the price of the alternatives, paper straws and biodegradable straws. And in areas without this legislation, our customers, the restaurants, had concerns about the price, which we have matched the price of conventional plastic straws. And even in places without this legislation, 90% of end users said that they believe restaurants should be investing in sustainable alternatives. And that's why we have developed a business model that is circular like no other. We turn an invasive pollutant plant, which is wreaking havoc on aquatic ecosystems in the southern United States, and like I said, tropical regions of the world, which companies are currently removing. There are hundreds of companies in the southern United States that are removing this raw material. And we're able to convert this raw material, aka the water hyacinth, into a bioplastic using our intellectual property and our technology that we have developed, so that we can produce a straw that is 100% biodegradable without the help of a composting machine, which then reduces the costs on the restaurant's end to invest in something like this, and for end users to be able to throw their Hippo straws onto the ground and not have any worries about it not biodegrading, which then allows us to restore ecological biodiversity in the world, since there's not as much pollution from single-use plastics and the effects of the paper straw industry. And now recreational water sports are able to be enjoyed again in places that were once infested with the water hyacinth. And so our value proposition to the consumers is a 100% biodegradable straw that is water resistant, so it doesn't fall apart in your drink so quickly or as quickly as paper straws and other biodegradable straw alternatives. It stays firm yet flexible, so it doesn't break apart whenever your kids are chewing on it. And it doesn't experience any of the problems that we see with paper straws in use. And we are able to offer the most affordable straw on the market because of the low cost material that we have sourced from water hyacinth removal companies in the South.
So on the market size, the numbers we're sharing today are fairly conservative, particularly on the target market size. And this owing, of course, to the COVID lockdowns that depressed restaurant activities. Total accessible market is 1.5 billion. And the serviceable market is 300 million. What is the serviceable market? These are the regions, geographic regions where plastic straws have been banned. So in those areas, we feel they are low-hanging fruit. We are not trying to convince a restaurant to switch from plastic, because The law has done that for us. And all we are approaching them is with a superior alternative to what they are using, which is paper straws. So that serviceable market of geographic regions that have banned plastic is 300 million, but conservatively we're saying we're targeting 10% of that, which is 30 million. Now, our customer segments include, of course, restaurants, fast food restaurants and bars, cafeterias, literally anywhere where a stirrer, a straw, utensil is required. How do we connect with these customers? We have partnered with, in affiliate marketing, of course, we've partnered with companies that are already supplying restaurants with goods and services that are non-competing to straws, of course. So they already have the customer in their portfolio, and the cost really is they're introducing a new product to the existing customer. And what that does is that the cost of customer acquisition comes down, number one. But number two, the customer acquisition cost itself has already been incurred, and we don't need to pay upfront for it because it's a affiliate commission based. So in fact, we only pay them on success. You know, they deliver an order, then we pay them. And so we are not outlaying money. So that is our strategy, our go-to-market strategies, affiliate marketing. And we have partnered, in fact, with a customer, with a company that has got a chain of restaurants who are its customers. But our story doesn't end there. We also set out to say we need to develop connections with the end user. The end user, we believe, and that is all of us, and that is, you know, yourself, you. The end user, we believe, is a demand influencer on the restaurants. So how about if the end user can actually request a Hippo straw when they go to McDonald's? And they can request a Hippo straw on the website or Twitter handle of KFC and say, can you serve Hippo straws? Why would they do that? It is because since we access our raw materials at literally free of charge, we don't pay for raw material, there is a huge cost savings on us that we enjoy that no one can compete with. Literally, no paper can compete with that huge saving. Now, that saving, we have decided to share that with the customers through coupon environmental credits. So our customer can redeem a coupon credit, which would be a cash-based credit, and it will be redeemable to their environmental cause of choice or charity or church or Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, who they can sponsor to say, look, go and clear the hoods when you're in camping, remove plastics, I'm gonna pay you $100. Well, that $100, the customer has earned it over, is pulling together resources, earned it over time in purchase of Hippo straws. And that way they become emotionally connected with us through our app. We're able to message them directly as they consume the product because it benefits them as they are able to extend that benefit to their charitable causes. Now, on our key activities, we have limited ourselves to mainly to R&D, what we believe we are good at. And why is that? That's because we believe the opportunity for substituting plastic can only expand. It will not shrink. So R&D in other areas of, paper bag, plastic bag substitution, other eating utensils, and that's what we'll focus on. Then there are other activities in the company, such as material acquisition. We will not, and we are not intending to start a hyacinth harvesting company, no. The hyacinth is already being harvested by companies that are being paid by local authorities and cities in the southern United States. They are having to dispose of it by burying it, incinerating it, or composting it, or applying herbicides. That's a huge handling cost on their part. When we approached them, they literally were like, you guys, where have you been? Come and get all you want, because we eliminate the handling cost on their part by loading it onto our trucks. That logistics connects to another activity, which is manufacturing. Now, we do not also intend to reinvent the wheel and start to capital intensive, set up a factory that processes water hyacinth. No, no. In fact, We will do contract manufacturing where companies that already, for example, handle paper pulp processing, and they're already there. Look at like right here in Indiana, just across the road, there is Wabash, the paper industries company, and they make paper. So they already handle plant material, only that we are contracting them to handle a less intensive, less costly processing or material that requires less chemicals, etc. And of course, the other activity will be compliance and regulation that across, you know, we are compliant. With that, Connor will wrap up with the cost structure and the revenue and the customer acquisition cost and the lifetime value.
So our main costs are in the research and development to improve our current product, the Hippo straw, and to develop other product lines, as well as material acquisition, which we only incur freight costs for the water hyacinth that we are using in our straws. And we also have our costs reduced because we are using contract manufacturers that are already ordering the ingredients for our biodegradable straws in bulk. So we receive that at a discount, as well as sales commissions to our affiliate marketing partner, which is around 10%, which goes into our customer acquisition cost. Over a retention time of 10 years, it is $15,000. And I would like to talk about our revenue streams, which is sales to restaurants in a B2B setting, although we plan to move to business to consumer. And that gives us a customer lifetime value of $111,000 over that same retention time of 10 years, giving us a LTV to CAC ratio of 7:1. Thank you for listening to our pitch today, and we invite you to join us in our journey to replace the replacements for single-use plastics. Thank you.
Stacey, you unmuted first. I assume you've got a question.
Yeah, so thanks for telling that story and taking us on that journey. This is a really clever approach. You answered some of my questions about that process of getting it out of the water hyacinth out of the water and into the straw. Have you validated that the water hyacinth material that's converted by the pulp and paper manufacturers into the bioplastic can run through a conventional straw extruding equipment?
Yes, the end material that we make is actually a 100% rapid biodegradable plastic pellet. So we convert, our technology converts the hyacinth plant cellulose into a plastic. And in the beginning, Stacey, this is where we emphasize that we took the technology and said, yes, okay, so let's develop technology. We developed it. But then we said, how do we take our technology and create a circular model and apply science in a very sustainable, beneficial model where end user gets a fabulous product that works like plastic, but minus all the negatives you can think of paper. And so our product, yes, extrudable through a plastic extruder because it is a pellet that is a 100% biodegradable plastic. And I will show you the picture if you allow me.
I don't want you to get too carried away because we're very short on time. Are there other questions before we go down into any more technical stuff?
Yeah, Dave, I'm just curious, or Connor, whoever wants to answer. This is Jennifer. Do you have any customer experience with the actual product in terms of how long it does last versus, you know, the other alternatives, taste, texture, all those things that impact customer experience?
So I've actually tested it in the lab, and from the results that I've gotten, it doesn't leave any taste in the drink because I've tried it myself. Although we haven't gotten any customer validation on that part, so I'm kind of biased, but there was no taste whenever I tried it out in the lab, and it also resisted water and like didn't break down for hours. With the final formulation that we've gotten to get to our final product. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. And I'm curious too, of your status with the IP that you referenced. Have you guys filed provisionals? Are you beyond that?
Yes, so we've actually, last week, we did the provisional with our counsel. And in fact, it was through him that kind of like put brakes on us not to put the product in testing with live customers. They said, just check with FDA for just final approvals, just that, you know, we can take it out there for people to actually put it in their mouths by just verifying with the FDA. So patent-wise, just last week, we began that process.
Okay, that was my next question. So thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
If we have time.
Just one comment. I think one thing that could make the pitch even more like exciting is if you were getting to that point where you had some validation that the polymer would run, extrude on the straw equipment at mass, you know, at mass production rates and costs, so that, you know, you've got that really strong story that the cost is comparable to the current plastic products.
And I would just add, from a presentation perspective, it's great when you tell your story. It's even more powerful when you tell the story from the point of view of your end user and your customer. So if I was giving this pitch, I would have an end user talk about why it's important to them, and I'd have a restaurant owner talk about why they would use your straw versus the current alternatives, and maybe even the distributor. You know, it's just helpful to have the point of view and perspective of the people that you're trying to address.
That's great advice. Thank you. Yeah, like we've talked to restaurants and they said they definitely want a product like ours just because the cost for like paper straws and biodegradable straws are so high right now. Like it's like 3 or 4 times as expensive as like your regular plastic straw. And we have calculated the costs, like the manufacturing costs for what our straws would be. And it's still comparable to plastic with everything that we've taken into account. So that's the water that goes into it, the electricity, overhead, pretty much everything. So I just thought I would add that in there.
Would it work for plastic cups too?
So we're not sure on that yet because we've mostly just been focusing on the straw as like our first product release, basically. But we definitely want to move to other product lines, and we think that it could at least work for like plastic bags and stuff like that. But we haven't tried like something like a paper cup yet. No.
All right. Thank you very much. We're out of time.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Next up is MockIView. And also the standard reminder for the judges as they're switching up to fill out your evaluation form.
Can you hear me okay? We're 2 partners and both of us are using the same microphone. So please let us know if you have any issues hearing us.
I hope you can hear me too.
Yep, you're good.
Hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars go into job search. Being grad students ourselves and seeing the grind firsthand, we knew how painful it is for a job seeker to get a right connection. We validated the same through our customer discovery process as well. Graduate job seekers have to send out hundreds of LinkedIn requests waiting for that right connection for a mock interview. With an acceptance rate of less than 5%, it's not an easy task. On the other hand, a hiring manager receives more than 250 applications for every job posting. And did you know they end up spending somewhere between $240,000 to $850,000 for every bad hire they make? We were very sure that they were receiving way too many applications with the number of rejections we were receiving. Over the 85 plus amazing customer interviews we've conducted and collected the perspectives, we had alumni and students tell us they wish they had such a platform when they graduated because it would definitely ease out their pain points. In our business model canvas, we've had many pivots and added some brilliant ideas which we've gathered from our customers as well. A few such ideas we want to highlight today is the concept of transcripts. It is the idea of converting the videos recorded to a transcript from which a hiring manager can filter out the keywords he's looking for and look for that right candidate. Third-party skill validation is another great feature on the app. We've also realized that the average willingness to pay for a candidate is around $50. And the interviewers are ready to take mock interviews somewhere between the range of 30 to 100. Not all interviewers are in there for money. There are interviewers who are looking back to give back to their school and society as well.
MockIView is a one-stop solution for all job services. It enables candidates to practice interviews with current employees and also build a relationship with one of those employees and get a referral into the company. It also helps the hiring managers to filter out candidates from the rating that the candidate gets out of the mock interview. MockIView is a three-sided network effects model where we have the job seekers on one side and we have the interviewers on the other side. And from the under the discretion of the job seekers, hiring managers will be able to filter out those candidates from the recordings that they watch in phase 3. We target around 600,000 users in the 5 years. US labor force between the age group of 25 to 64 comprises of 134 million users. And of that, 30% of unemployed and 3% of employed who have bachelor's degree or more and fall within the age bracket of 25 to 35 years are around 600,000. In the first year, we are going to target 6,000 of Purdue graduates who are graduating in the near future or are looking for internships. Like every company, MockIView also has a few competitors. Ramp and LinkedIn help candidates practice with strangers. LinkedIn helps in networking and also knowing about the company. Finally, professional development centers help candidates to practice or review answers to common interview questions. However, MockIView has a competitive edge over LinkedIn. We have also realized after our customer discovery that with only 5% of acceptance rate in LinkedIn, it's very difficult for a candidate to get hold of one employee within the company and build a relationship because there's no motivation for that interviewer there on LinkedIn to accept the request, unlike MockIView.
Now to look at the numbers and what MockIView would look 5 years from now. We've conducted a sensitivity analysis to understand the revenue streams. We've considered 3 revenues. 1, the commission on interviews. This is the amount which an interviewee will be paying to the interviewer. We plan to charge a commission on that, but that is after we build a solid customer base. And next is the advertisement revenue. And the third revenue is the hiring manager revenue in the third phase. But for the sensitivity analysis, we've not considered the hiring manager's revenue. So that will be an addition over and above the projections we have. So in the most likely scenario, we see that the revenues can go as high as 3.1 million by the end of 5th year. We've even looked at the customer acquisition cost, and we see that it will be higher in the first few years where our target is to build the customer base. And as we build our brand value, we see that the customer acquisition cost will be going down. Now for the pricing strategy for the job seekers, we've come up with bundling, which will help the job seeker either to choose from the same interviewer or the multi-interviewer approach, which will give them a chance to build on the feedback they've received and have a better interview experience. For the hiring managers, to make it attractive, we are going to launch premium features such as transcripts and even making the video available at the discretion of the interviewee. And even we plan to have a solid base of a candidate pool from which the hiring managers can select. For the success measures, we've divided our milestones into 3 phases. In the phase 1, which is around 1 to 2 years, we are targeting 20,000 users. In the phase 2, that is for the 3rd and 4th year, we're targeting 400,000 users. In the phase 3, by the end of 5th year, we're targeting 60,000 users with a revenue of 3.1 million.
The go-to-marketing strategy for the interviewers is divided into 2 parts. In phase 1, we are going to target tech industry because they are the early adopters. And we are going to leverage the professional development centers, especially to begin with Purdue's Professional Development Center. And finally, we are going to even leverage the customers with whom we have built relationship during our customer discovery process to register them as interviewers. In phase 2, we are going to make investments on the goodies and coupons so that we can keep the interviewers constantly motivated to take up more and more interviews. And we are also going to improve the quality of interviews by constantly training the interviewers. Finally, we are going to use digital marketing to boost the company's brand. For the candidates, we are going to record videos of employees who are current employees of dream companies, ask them about tips and tricks of how to get into their companies, and then use digital marketing to post those videos on platforms, social media platforms, so that when a customer clicks on that, he lands up at MockIView website and has to sign up so that he gets weekly updates of these videos. For the hiring managers, that is in phase 3, we are going to have a tie-up with a tech company, a small scale tech company, and perform a proof of concept on that. And then using the return of investment of that particular project, we are going to project that to larger companies and scale our business. We have successfully built the website which caters to the first phase. And here are a few screenshots of our website. Finally, we have also started conducting beta testing on our website, and we have got extremely good feedback on it. A few of our customers have also mentioned that the website is very intuitive. We also value the negative feedback on our website, and we have made it our motive that we constantly update our website to make the user's experience excellent. Finally, we are seeking 100,000 investment, 8,000 of which goes towards web development, adding enhancements and all the features that we spoke about. 50,000 goes towards the first 1,000 free mock interviews, and $42,000 goes towards building the MockIView brand. Join us
in this exciting journey of making dreams come true.
Thank you. We are now open for questions.
Questions from the judges?
I have a couple of questions. What I find really interesting is you've identified a problem that I was not familiar with, this notion of mock interviews. So I would have liked to see a little more explanation around how mock interviews are used today by job seekers. But extending into like your future business scenario, I'm wondering, does the keyword filters, could it in some way introduce bias into the hiring process? Do you feel like it will lead to sort of fair and equitable hiring process, and are some candidates advantaged and others disadvantaged? I know companies are, trying to make sure they have a diverse slate of candidates and are not introducing bias into the hiring process.
So how the keyword search functions in our website is that on resumes, we have our experience, but it really matters under that pressure situation if I, as a candidate, am speaking about a particular skill that I have. Say, for example, I speak about Java all throughout my mock interview. That means there's higher chance of me having more experience in Java, right? And those are the kind of keywords that hiring managers can use to filter out candidates. And on the other part, we also do a third-party skills validation. On LinkedIn, what do you have? You have the candidate just can put oh, I am skillful in Java, I know Python, I know I've worked in all applications. But after the mock interview, the mock interviewer can actually check those boxes of all those skills that a candidate speaks about. So that is how it is going to be extremely valuable for hiring managers. And it cuts down on the number of candidates that they have to go through, like the number of applications that they have to go through for a single job posting.
And I would like to take the first part of the question. So Stacey, all companies have become extremely customized in their interview process these days. They are looking for a cultural fit, and gone are those days that you generally prepare for your interview from one perspective. It's really important that a candidate now knows what company it is and what are the cultural values, and it's really important that they take that inside perspective. And we know this really well firsthand because we are seeing it ourselves and through our friends. So that is how the job market has become, and it's really important to have that understanding as to what they're getting themselves into.
Thank you for that. That's actually very helpful, really.
So this is Jennifer. I agree with Stacey. I think just for maybe some feedback on presentation, it may be helpful toward the outset to give an example in some way. I know you have limited time, but if there's some way to show how this works in practice, that could be really helpful, for your audience understanding the proposition. For those of us who may not get it quite as much, not being maybe in the job market anymore in the same ways that you all are experiencing. I'm not sure I fully captured through the presentation how it is that we incentivize the mock interviewer. You at one point mentioned coupons and goodies. Can you explain a little more? What is it that they receive in exchange for their participation in the process? You're on mute.
So how it works is that for every mock interview, say for example, we charge $50 and that is being paid by the candidate. And 93% of that is going to go towards the interviewer. The interviewer is going to get most part of it. We are going to charge a little part of it as service.
And to add on to that, while through the customer discovery process, you raised a very valid point that we've understood that we've always thought money would be a motivating factor for the interviewer to come and take the interviews, but there are candidates and interviewers who are not looking for money. They really want to help the students from their particular school or really want to give back to the society, because when they were preparing for interviews, there were people who helped them. So to cater to such kind of people also, we've come up with the idea that there'll be an option to donate it to charity or give it back to their school funds as well, because we don't want to miss out on any interviewer who's willing to help. Either it could be to their pockets or to the charity. It's completely a choice we would give to them.
Got it.
So a student hires goes through your service, hires an interviewer, and they do a mock interview. How does that improve their chances of getting a job? That I'm having trouble making that leap.
Firstly, it's constant practice, and that too with the current employee. So before every interview that a candidate is selected for, he or she tries to send out so many requests on LinkedIn so that he can go and talk to one person within the company who is actually in that same position. And we are providing that service by doing auto matching so that the candidate is matched to that same employee and gets a hang of how it works from the inside. And apart from that, doing constant mock interviews, you are going to be extremely efficient on interviewing, and you might even land at your job at your first interview. So the success rate of cracking that interview increases. And on the final note, I would also say that if you constantly do well in a particular mock interview with a interviewer, you also have a chance to get a referral if the interviewer is happy with you. And what incentive does the interviewer get out of it? He'll get the referral bonus from his company.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Question, is there always a relationship between the interviewer and the company that has the position they're trying to hire?
We try to match it as closely as possible, but if not, there's an algorithm which will first say, for example, it will try to match 10 features. If not, if it cannot find a result, then it will maybe go down to 9 features and then 5 features, so things like that. So there's that algorithm which matches maybe first, say for example, I'm applying for product manager role at Google. So the first condition would be a product manager within Google as an interviewer. But if I do not get something like that, I would drop the criteria Google and try for product manager roles in other tech companies. So that is how the algorithm works.
Okay, thanks for that, Mahith. I was trying to understand if there was like a formal relationship between the interviewer and the position, or if the interviewer could influence. But I hear that referral is potentially one way that the candidate can maybe get a little extra endorsement. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So can I ask, I want to understand 2 things. One, can you explain to me how this matching algorithm works? Like how, like, does it just find someone with the same job that someone applies into and it just pings someone's LinkedIn and brings them in, or do they have to sign up on the platform in order to do it? Like, how does that work? And secondly, a separate question, is there a bit of an adverse selection problem going on here? I'm just trying to understand. I mean, normally referrals by employees are caused by either a desire to give someone that they know that they recommend and is, you know, that they know is skilled and appropriate for the role, or it's someone that they like and personally want to help. And I imagine those incentives are still there to help those people regardless, whereas an outsider who they may not have a connection with simply because they do a mock interview, you know, are they really trying to refer those people? I'm trying to understand that like incentive there, independent of the matching question.
Sure. Can you please stop sharing? I'll share my screen. I'll show you how it works for a candidate. So here is the part where a candidate can request for an interview, and he fills out all these values here: type of interview, what kind of interview he is looking for. Is it just an elevator pitch review or a behavioral interview? And we're going to add a few more at later point of time. And then what kind of industry he or she is interested in working for, then company, and then there are a few parameters like this that we have selected. And finally, basing upon what kind of profiles we have as interviewers, we are going to first try to match all the parameters that a user has entered here. If not, we are going to drop up one parameter one by one and then try to match the candidates. And that's how the matching algorithm works. So we have applying for which kind of position as well, like I mentioned, product manager, so things like that. And then we have 7 days of availability that could be used. And once a user submits the request, it auto matches. And coming to the next question that you asked, referral is just one part of the story. The biggest value addition that a particular interviewer is getting from our customer discovery as well, first is giving back to the society or the school. And the other thing, what we have figured out is there are so many interviewers who want to earn additionally. So we have interviewed almost all, many MBA graduates who make a 6-figure salary, but still they are interested to earn $80 to $100 from per hour from this platform. So that's how incentive works for interviewers. I hope that answers your questions.
Do you envision giving the interviewers like some sort of quality score or rating in terms of how good of an interviewer they are and how successful they are in getting their candidates placed? Like, do they know what they're talking about?
Yes, so we have two kinds of ratings. It's like an Uber model where the driver rates the candidate and the candidate rates the driver. But we have another level added to that as well. So when a hiring manager is trusting a particular interviewer to pick or filter candidates, the hiring manager will also be able to rate that particular interviewer. So that will help other hiring managers to know if they can rely or believe the review that a particular interviewer has given on a particular candidate.
All right, we are out of time. Thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
And we are on to our last team, ParkOut.
Yep. All good to go. There we go.
We can see you, we can hear you, you're ready to go.
I'm ready to go. All right. So thank you everyone for being here. So we're building ParkOut, which is a digital marketplace to connect buyers and sellers for parking and tailgating space for events. So one of the events I really enjoy here in West Lafayette is going to Purdue football games. So I really enjoy football. I like watching it live and supporting our Boilermakers out on the field. So it's a lot of fun for me and a lot of fun for a lot of other people. But there's things leading up to the game that are a lot less fun. So one is finding parking. So most people tell me, hey, if I get up early enough and go 7 hours before the game, I'll find parking. But I usually like to sleep in on my Saturdays, but that's not really that doable if I want to get to the game and not have to walk a couple miles. And then I have my buddy Miguel. He really likes tailgating. I like tailgating too, but if you want to have a good tailgating spot, you have to get up even earlier. And depending on where you're tailgating, there can be a lot of restrictions of whether you can have a grill or this or that. So, this kind of makes the whole game day event a little bit more hectic and a little less pleasant than it otherwise could be. So our solution is really to leverage the community in the area, so private property owners around an event venue who have space that no one is using, but they could rent out their driveway for some parking, allow people to tailgate in their front lawn and collect a little bit of cash. And then people going to these games, hey, you have peace of mind. I know where I'm parking. I know where I'm tailgating before I even go. If I want to go a couple hours later than I usually do, I know it's completely fine. And so, we think this would be an idea very attractive for people looking for parking or tailgating for events, and even for just property owners in the area. And because of that, it turns out this already happens a lot. So if you go to a Purdue football game, you'll typically see a lot of private property owners standing around, hey, 10, 20 bucks, come park over here. This is actually, I was checking out the parking scene for Colts games, even during COVID with limited attendance. A lot of private property owners are standing in front, hey, $10, $20, come park in my lot. And so, this is a value prop that already seems pretty attractive for sellers, that they're willing to stand out there with signs asking people to come park. And so all we're really trying to do here is digitize this marketplace. We want sellers to not have to stand outside all day, to list their spots on our app so that people can come in and I can book ahead of time, have the peace of mind. I know where I'm parking. I know where I'm going to tailgate, have it all taken care of before the game or game day even starts. And so what we wanted to go out and see is if other customers that we would have buying and the sellers really like this idea as much as we do. And so we started by talking to several potential buyers. And generally what we found is most people do end up planning their day around parking. So even when they don't complain directly about it, they do, have to, you go at a certain time because you don't, you want to have a place to park your car. And then we did hear several frustrating experiences around parking, but most importantly, we learned people would be willing to pay a premium to book that parking ahead of time. And it was actually through our conversations with buyers that we actually learned that people would also be quite interested in being able to book tailgating space. So that's one side of the platform. Now the other side is the sellers. Now, do the sellers want to be on a digital platform? So when we think about potential sellers, we think it's good to think of them in 3 buckets. So there's the official provider. So think of Purdue for Purdue football games. There's property managers or owners who are already doing this. And then there's households who could be doing it, but currently are not. So we went and talked to them. And to sort of understand these sellers, we're going to look at the West Lafayette market. So this is Ross-Ade Stadium in the middle. And this circle is a half-mile radius around Ross-Ade Stadium. So these are the spots that Purdue will operate on a game day. And what happens is they operate several cash lots. So what that means is on the day of, on demand, you pay $20, you get a spot to park. When we talked to Purdue about this, them and a lot of other Big Ten schools do this, and they want to move to a digital solution where people book and get their parking ahead of time, but they haven't done so due to technology and pricing reasons is what they've cited to us. So that just showed us that there is an opportunity even at the official provider level for this type of platform. And another thing that we already kind of knew was that Purdue and a lot of other event venues simply don't have the supply to meet the demand they're going to face on many of their events. So to meet that demand, a lot of private property owners, these are fraternities, single family households, as well as property groups who actually own several properties in the area, but on an event day, they use their lawns, they have it written in the leases, they basically use the lawns and the lots for selling game day parking. And we found a lot of these providers are able to charge double the official price because people have to park somewhere. And we found that a lot of them are interested in going into a digital marketplace, especially when you have a less pristine location, you're much more interested because you have the potential to drive more sales. But we realized all these sellers, one thing they're very interested in is helping with the event day management. So the case is typically like a property manager has 5 or 6 properties. They have to do a lot of coordinating back and forth. A lot of them describe playing Tetris in the yard. So, depending on a pickup truck comes, a smaller car, they're talking a lot back and forth. Where's their space to put this vehicle? And then finally, there's these households who could be selling but don't. And what we've learned is a lot of them are interested. Some of them don't do it because they feel like they haven't had like they don't have fair marketing in the sense that if you're looking for parking, the houses you see first, you typically are going to probably end up parking there. Whereas even houses around the block, around the street, they just don't get that good visibility, even though the walking distance isn't that much greater. And then other potential new sellers just weren't aware of the opportunity. A lot of people didn't, they don't want to do this for $5 or $10. But when we explain, if you have 2 or 3 cars parked or 4 or 5, you can easily make $100 on a single game day. And people really like the passive nature of it. For example, if you just list your spots on the app, there's not too much work you really have to do to generate that new income. And so the market opportunity we see for us is greater than $100 million annually in revenue. And we got to this by looking at event attendance in 2019, assuming 10% of event attendees need parking. Now we could generate $5 in revenue per transaction. And we get to that $5 by charging a $2 booking fee, a $2 fee to our sellers, as well as a 10% commission. So looking at the competitive landscape, there are parking marketplaces already out there like Spot Hero, ParkWiz, or ParkMobile, but they're very heavily focused on garages and lots in dense metropolitan areas. There's a few smaller local solutions out there. Park and Party is a small company in Michigan. Tailgater Concierge and a few other websites similar to them operate these websites where people can go and ask them to set up a tent for them if they service your campus. And really how we differentiate from all of them is, one, we're entirely focused on this event parking environment. And the supply we're really targeting is this peer-to-peer connect, local property owners with the event attendees. And what we've, a key part of what we've learned is there's a lot of underserved markets here. So for example, West Lafayette, not a single spot is sold digitally. A lot of Big Ten schools, SEC schools fit this bill. Other places in Indiana, like Speedway, Indiana, where Indianapolis Motor Speedway is, there's currently not much digital parking sold, but a lot of local property owners selling parking. And we actually tried signing up on Spot Hero, one of the larger companies, to see if we could sign up to sell parking in West Lafayette, and they simply said, hey, we're not operating in your area right now. And Purdue's a roughly $400,000 market annually. So we see a lot of opportunity where this market's being ignored, and we could take advantage of that. So our go-to-market strategy is really focused on marketing in these underserved areas that have a good bit of private property ownership near the event venue. So using things like Every Door Direct Mail, which is a service by the United States Postal Service, where we can send a flyer to everyone in a certain area to have them know about the platform and onboard them from there. Also using social media and local radios and podcasts to get the word out about the platform to buyers and sellers. And currently we're building up our MVP and we're planning to launch this summer. Our current target is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway events in Speedway, Indiana. The races start in May. And so May 15th, May 30th is the Indy 500, and all things look like they're gonna have fans in attendance. So that's currently our target. We're pre-revenue, so we have a very rough calculation of what our LTV and CAC can be. Assuming some social media marketing costs, offering a first event premium, and Every Door Direct Mail acquisition costs can cost us about $40 to acquire a customer. And we believe we can recoup that cost within 2 years. But the long-term value of a customer can be quite high, so our LTV CAC ratio can get close to 10. So the team consists of myself, Ravinderjeet Singh. I have a background in electrical engineering. I'm at Purdue doing my PhD in biomedical engineering. And I have my good friend, Miguel Delgado. He's been working as a software engineer for the past 3-4 years. He has his master's in computer science. So we have a very strong technical grounding to build this application. And we built it up quite a good bit. And we're planning to launch soon. And would be happy to take any questions.
Nice job. Questions from the judges?
I have a question. I can understand how you can source the sellers by just looking at the event and drawing some kind of perimeter around the geography. How are you thinking about acquiring the buyers or getting the information to the buyers, because they could be coming in from anywhere?
I agree. And what we found is when people go to an away game, for example, that's when this is even more attractive because you're less familiar with the place you're going to. So our current plan is to really focus on like football games and things. So marketing in where the away team is coming from, as well as the home team. And another nice thing is a lot of football fans create Facebook groups. So we've been joining these Facebook groups and posting in there. We've driven some traffic to our landing page, had a few people sign up to be an early user. So that's kind of our strategy, is leveraging that, a lot of these events have these communities and they have these social media groups that we can try to get the word out as well.
The Indy 500 will be an interesting one, right? Because there's not really like an away team, but there may be like, the track fans and the race groups, I guess.
I agree. Yeah, that one is harder. So that one we're really focused on the sellers. So we've been like local speedway community groups is what we've been working with, and we've gotten a few people there. Our really goal with speedway is to really just get some spots sold and see if people will use it well. But I agree that marketing in that one is a bit more or less clear.
Yeah. So along those lines, I should tell you, I'm an early investor in Spot Hero, and I'm also an investor in Eat Street, which basically it's food delivery, but in secondary markets. So I like what you're doing a lot. My question is, have you considered a rev share with the university, in this case, with the university? So universities are really suffering financially. It may be an opportunity, if you had an opportunity to provide a little bit of a rev share back to the university, in exchange for marketing, like in exchange for them promoting it out to, or to the athletic association. I'm just curious if you've given that a thought in your model.
I have not thought of that, but that sounds like a great idea to, with any, I think like event, the actual event people, if they would market it for their people buying their tickets, if I share the revenue for them to market, hey, you can book your parking for us with ParkOut. Did not think of that at all. I agree, that would be a great approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I have one other question. Is there a remedy if the seller defaults, like the buyer has purchased and reserved and then they get there and the seller doesn't have a spot or something goes wrong?
So So we talked to sellers and we found they do, for example, if it rains, people even let people park on they don't want people parking on their grass if it rains. So they're going to sell less spots if it's raining, for example. So I think we are trying to just understand, in what environments they want to change their supply and tackle that ahead of time. But in terms of just dealing with issues, we are setting up our payment flow to where the payment doesn't transfer until after the day of. So if there was a day of event, we could easily at least refund the customer and help them maybe find another spot. But we have been trying to at least understand, some of these sellers, they like their lawns, even if they let people on them. So they're not gonna let you on if it's raining, for example. But otherwise, so those are the things we do, we're learning, and we want to make sure we get ahead of those types of issues.
Yeah, I to that point, I was also thinking about tailgating and, ruining a lawn. I was thinking about the liability of that. And something as, mundane as going to the bathroom. If you're going to be on somebody's lawn for hours, maybe drinking some beer, like, how does that work?
That is a good question. I did not think about that part. So what I do know is some of these people are already selling some tailgating space during an event, but how they deal, if someone needs to use a restroom is a good question. I have not thought about that. I guess, I don't know if they'd be allowing people to use their restroom.
Well,
that is,
I mean, parking, you go someplace else.
Yeah,
but if
parking,
you're
you is just parking, yeah.
But tailgating, you're going to be, right?
Yeah, I agree. That is I guess, we would talk to our sellers to see if they'd be comfortable with letting people use their own restroom.
But you can certainly charge a lot of money. I know people get desperate.
Yeah, no, so I mean, like, as far as looking at reviews for other companies, we have found like bathrooms being a big issue that, so like some places like to charge you to use their bathroom, which is a little, but I think if people know they have a bathroom and maybe you could charge more for, like, the tailgating might be more lucrative than the parking. So I think that's definitely something to communicate with the sellers.
And I think a related item may be, particularly with the privately owned properties, at least in university towns, many of these are rented, right? And so you've got somebody already with a lease arrangement, probably not anticipating having people parked on their lawn, at the time that they signed their lease. So just maybe some logistical things to work around as it relates to that as well. So
what's interesting is, which I guess maybe undergrads just don't mind, this is already happening to them. So property owners rent these, and I was surprised, but they literally, so first I was talking to people and they're like, yeah, my landlord already does this. And they basically park on their lawns, and I guess I'm assuming it's written in their lease that this is going to happen, so they know of it ahead of time. So it is happening. I would say there are, that's all I know about that it does already happen. But the other side is if renters wanted to do it and their landlord didn't care, that we could definitely accommodate that. But yeah, I agree that the renter side does get a little complicated sometimes. And roughly, we've seen, we can get this data from the USPS mostly, but about a third of the property in that area is showing is owned and lived in, and the other 2/3 is rented out.
And then I'm curious, so do you have the payment logistics all figured out as well?
Yeah, so Stripe is pretty fantastic for handling all this. So basically, we have everyone on board onto Stripe, and so they have a seller account, or they handle all the banking information, all the sensitive information. We just have some tokens we have to store in a database, makes it much more secure and compliant with all the regulations. And yeah, it's pretty easy to split the revenue and make sure they get their share, we get our share, and the card is charged and refunds. They have a good infrastructure set up for us to handle the financial side.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask a couple of things. One, the addressable market that you have of 111 million,
Mhm.
is that a national number?
So that number is based on, I just looked up attendance to all the NFL games, NBA games, MLB, and collegiate football and basketball, and I think NASCAR as well. And I just added, and concerts. Looked up all those numbers, added up the attendance, and that's how I got to the 222 million in attendance. And the 10% is really an assumption. I think generally if you're driving, there's at least 2 people in a car. That drops it to 50. It's probably, some people are probably Ubering. So it's hard to know what the parking rate is because this industry isn't very well tracked, right? A lot of it's operating in cash. There's a lot of small providers everywhere. So it's hard to get this number in any official way. So this is just me looking at all attendance and hoping that we can even, get to the official provider and really drive all attendance parking through this platform.
Makes sense. Then the other thing, like Mark, we're also early investors in Spyro. Per that, I'm sure Mark has the same experience. We get a lot of inbound opportunities in the parking space. And so, over the years, I know I can't even remember all the names of the different attempts at trying to do an Airbnb style, offering lot space availability in real time for whether it's events or commutes, work parking or whatever, things like that. And they just kind of come and go. I'm curious what you guys feel is the stickiness factor here that keeps this model around, what's unique.
That's a great question. And so we actually did study that a lot, actually. So I don't know if Hello Parking was the first example we found. And from what I learned about Spot Hero, they tried this peer-to-peer, but then really pivoted. So the reason we think it's failed is people have really, really driven it towards the dense metropolitan area. And we think the value proposition isn't great for sellers in that area because 1, if you're in a dense area, you don't have the space to give up. And 2, there's already a lot of supply there. So it's not like you're charging a whole lot of money. And so we think it's the event use case. And the reason it makes us confident that this will be sticky is people are already doing this. They're standing outside with their signs, $20, come park here. But no one has really, has focused on that event market is from what I can see. And so we think that value prop is so much greater when an event occurs because, the supply in the area isn't meant for the demand that comes in. And so people are giving up, space for a few hours and they're making a lot of money. So that's why we think it's really this focusing on this event space is what allows that peer-to-peer model to work. Because for sellers, it's just a much better deal. And people who are doing this aren't doing this as their primary source of income, right? It's a good, well, I'm making enough money, so I'll put in the work is kind of what's happening. And so we're just trying to ease their work and hopefully drive more sales.
So I have an investment thesis around trust. And if you look at both sides of this equation, there's a lot of trust involved that the property is going to, that the space will be there, that the parker isn't going to damage the lawn or property, and they're going to behave appropriately. How do you engender trust? How do you, for both sides of the equation, how do you make people feel comfortable that and confident that their car is not going to be broken into or stolen, or that the spot exists? How do you take that tension out?
That is a great question. So I think in the long term, that's easy to solve with reviews and history. In the onset, what we've been focused on is actually, as much as possible, actually talking to our sellers at first and really developing a relationship with them. And even for the buyers, having them, tell a little bit about themselves. So we've talking, people already doing this. We asked them this question: aren't you worried about someone tearing your yard up? Do they leave a lot of trash around? For the most part, they tell us, most people, they don't have issues usually. So I don't know if most people attending collegiate events are not. I wouldn't make that assumption, but I guess at the end, it's just developing that trust, like Airbnb. I mean, the idea is kind of crazy at first, but you develop this trust through reviews and so on. And so I think initially we're thinking about maybe adding a check mark to the people we actually talk to, if they'd be willing to talk to us, and just having them explain who they are and buyers explain who they are to help develop that initial trust. And then I think over time, it's once you get traction, the reviews kind of speak for themselves and the history will speak for itself. So I think, but initially it's really about, I think it's us just doing the work of, hey, you guys, you're serious about this, and then making sure they're comfortable with buyers in the sense that they at least explain who they are and what they're just a fan. Okay, things like that is what we're hoping will solve that issue.
Good answer. Thank you.
All right, and we are out of time. Great job, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And thanks again to all of the finalists. So what's going to come up next is if I can ask the finalist judges to log off of this call, and then through the Philo platform, head to the deliberation room. We'll be chatting there. For the rest of the audience here, I'd like to now pass the stage off to Bill Arnold, where he will be interviewing Akash Raju, the winner from last year's competition.